Welcome to the Black Sparrow Media Internet Broadcast Network.
You are listening to Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a podcast about Linux, open source, and amateur radio for everyone. Now here are your hosts, Russ, K5TUX, Cheryl, W5MOO, and Bill, NE4RD.
Well, hello everybody and welcome. You have tuned in to episode number 485 of Linux in the Ham Shack, the most terrific amateur radio podcast on the internet. This is our deep dive episode, so we welcome you all into our deep dive, and we're glad you're here with us to talk about the topic we're about to talk about. But before we get into talking about the topic we're about to talk about, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Russ, K5TUX.
I'm Cheryl, W5MOO.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD.
Welcome in, everybody, and as luck would have it, Bill decided to dig a topic out of the archive or something, or just, I know we were having a discussion about this actually a day or two ago, and so that's probably what generated this topic. So our topic is, how does one QSL? And I don't know that we've ever really talked about that on this show at all, and probably because I'm really terrible about QSLing, but I don't know. Are you a good QSLer? Do you keep everybody abreast of all the contacts you've made?
Basically electronically, I do. Paper, generally, if someone sends me a card, I'll send them a card back if I remember.
Yeah, electronically, again, I'm in the same boat as you, but that's only because it sort of does it automatically, and I don't have to worry about it. But the beauty of electronic QSLing and the beauty of trusted QSL, which is one of the things we're going to talk about, probably actually the first thing we're going to talk about. So we'll let Bill go ahead and lead us into our topic of QSL.
Yeah, we kind of tiptoed a little bit into QSLing before when we started talking about logging applications and why you should be logging and the importance of logging your contacts and stuff like that. So, I just started getting a lot of random emails of QSL cards and stuff like that. And I was like, let's go revisit this topic in full one more time. And let's talk a little bit about the QSLing options that are out there. And, what generally most people are using to do their QSLing. And I guess we'll touch base with the very first bullet point here, which are all the electronic QSL services. One that we're very familiar with, which is Logbook of the World, or LOTW. This is the ARRL's logging confirmation service. And this also gives you access to all the ARRL awards like DXCC, Worked All States, Worked All Zones, Worked All Continents. And as well, you get access to the CQ awards, which was added a few years ago, of WPX, which are the prefixes. And I believe... what is the other one? I believe they also have a Worked All Zones award that's in there. So if you're interested in doing QSL confirmations electronically and you're interested in collecting some wallpaper for your shack, Logbook of the World is a great place to start. It does require you getting a certificate to sign your logs, your ADIFs that you actually transmit to the Logbook of the World server. So you have to sign every transmission, and then as well you can download all your confirmations and whatnot at some periodic instance. Whether that be daily or every time you upload, you download some. Your uploaded logs are not processed instantly. They have gotten a lot better, but of course, in heavy contests or contest weekends and whatnot, it will be delayed when you upload your log. It might take a little bit of processing time. And then those QSLs will start confirming with people that have also uploaded their log to Logbook of the World. So primarily that's the one that I personally use often, and I think it's the only one I have set up right now on my rebuild shack computer here. The other electronic QSL service that people are familiar with is the EQSL, and EQSL has their own set of awards. And I believe they're not, interchangeable with the Logbook of the World ones or the ARRL and CQ awards. So if you're interested in tracking awards in the EQSL space for their particular awards, which you can go to their website, eqsl.cc, and see what kind of awards that they have, those would be available through that. And most of your modern loggers will handle both Logbook of the World and EQSL with little to no effort beyond just setting up your username and password inside of your configuration and basically just transmitting the QSLs or the QSOs that you have that you want to try to get confirmed through those services. So those are the two big ones. And I know there are other electronic services out there, but they're not specifically for awards. They might have some of their own awards, but we'll mention those a little bit later in the list of electronic QSL services. The other option for award tracking, again, if you're interested in awards, is, of course, paper. And paper is the old-fashioned way of actually sending your card out to people and trying to get a card back. And most people have learned if you want a card back, you send a self-addressed stamped envelope in there. And that generally will get you a card back. If you do not send a self-addressed stamped envelope, your mileage may vary and you probably won't get a card back. So if you're interested in collecting cards, like real paper cards, that's the way you want to do it. Put a SAISY in there and mail it. Now, what happens if you have to deal with DX QSLs? So it's out of the country. What do you do? There's services called a QSL manager service. The one that I could find is K3FN's QSL manager service, and they have their own little web page there, airmailpostage.com. And they take care of doing a QSL service specifically for you. Obviously, if you pay, it is a paid service, and they give you information on exactly what they can QSL and how they do it and everything else. A lot of people will use this as instead of what you generally hear is I'm fine in the bureau. BURO is normally how it's abbreviated out there in the ham radio space. A bureau is different than this. So this is a different paid service for taking care of those DX QSL cards. So real QSL cards. The other QSL card service would be through the bureaus. ARRL supplies a incoming and outgoing service. So the incoming obviously is for QSLs destined for you. And these are generally handled through by your numeric portion of your call sign. So even though I'm in 7 land, my numeric portion is 4. So NE4RD. So I would use the 4 QSL bureau for my incoming ARRL or my incoming QSL cards from DX. You do have to establish an account there and money to pay for mailing. And generally what they'll do is they'll bundle up a bundle of QSL cards. You won't get like one at a time here and there. You'll actually get a stack of cards at one time as they build up in the bureau. Now, the outgoing service, I've never actually used it, but I'm just going to hit the website here real quick just so I can have some of the information here. There is a charge, obviously, for using it, for sending out cards. And they have a rate for 10 or fewer cards, or a rate for more cards, depending upon how many you're actually sending out. And you should follow the instructions there. You also have to set up an account, and they'll take care of getting those out to where they need to go. And they do the same thing. They bundle them to the QSL manager and the foreign, DXCC. And that's generally how the stuff gets passed around through the bureaus. So every DXCC entity can, they don't have to have one, but they can have a bureau that basically does the same thing. They take a bundle of incoming cards, and then they'll sort them appropriately and then get them to where they need to go in the same kind of process, probably a bundled configuration where, as more cards come in, they'll get those to those people. So going through the bureau can take some time to get a card. But if you're collecting the real cards, it is definitely the way to go. It's definitely not as fast or as efficient as using something like Logbook of the World is. But not every DXCC entity or, DX contact is going to have a Logbook of the World account, although they have made it tremendously easier for DX entities to get a Logbook of the World certificate and then be able to actually electronically get your confirmations that way. And you put in here some of these the nets. What is this? The Worked All States nets?
Yeah, there's lots of nets out there. Worked all states, worked all countries. There's like the 3905 Century Club. There's OMIS. There's the Triple H. These are all nets on HF dedicated to helping people make contacts and get awards. They're generally called awards nets or specialty nets or things like that. And generally speaking, or at least everyone that I've participated in has their own bureau that's similar to the ARRL's bureau, but it's specific to the net. So if you're a member of these awards nets and you join, you basically have to send them a few dollars or whatever, and then they put a pool of self-addressed stamped envelopes in a bin, and then when you make contacts, you send them a bunch of QSL cards for them to distribute, and then they get them in. And then as your inbox, fills up, just like with the ARRL, they'll wait till you get 10, 15, 20, whatever fits in an envelope, and then they'll ship it off to you. And then all you have to do is every once in a while, when you start running low on envelopes in the bureau, you send them a few more dollars, and they keep, control of your QSL cards for you. And, like I said, for each of these specialty nets or these, awards nets, they all have their own bureaus. So you might find yourself in many, many bureaus. So, but
all the bureaus,
all the bureaus all the time. It does sort of make it nice where you only have to send your cards to one place and they all get to where they need to go. And then all the ones coming from wherever they are that are, headed for you, make it to your mailbox. So, bureaus definitely serve a decent purpose, and usually it's a minimal expense.
Yeah, and it makes it tremendously easy to send cards overseas and get cards back overseas, which, there's weird, postage costs and, stuff like that. Some people like collecting the stamps and stuff, which, can be an interesting part of the collection of these DX QSL cards. So, it's kind of nice to use the bureaus when you're wanting to get those paper cards and also, get the postage stamps from the foreign country as well.
Yep, absolutely. That's what I've done most of my QSLing, and otherwise it's pretty much been direct. I don't think I've ever used the ARRL, so.
Yeah, I haven't either. Should have, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You make enough, DX contacts, it's probably worth your time.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the other electronic services that I mentioned before that aren't necessarily for award tracking, and some wouldn't be considered valid for some awards, but some people like having their logs in other areas so they can also be shared for like-minded individuals. Things that come to mind would be Club Log, is real popular for people doing de-expeditions and stuff like that. They have a service for incoming and outgoing QRS. So that's QSL, QSL blah, blah, blah service, something like that. I can't remember what the R stands for. But basically, you can pay to get a card from a de-expedition. Some people frown on it a little bit just because because you're basically paying for a QSL card. But in essence, it also helps fund the de-expedition. So you generally see the OQRS service, applied to those de-expeditions that are, looking for funding. And this is just another way that they can help, fund, their de-expedition, which are, of course, very expensive and, might be rightfully so to charge for some of this QSL service to help recover some of the costs for actually running the de-expedition. But some of the other electronic request areas that you can find are like CamQTH actually has a log storage system, and they'll confirm contacts, again, not specifically for award tracking, within like the ARRL or CQ awards. The QRZ.com, which a lot of people use for, call sign lookups. Same thing. They have a log thing that they've added to their product quite a while ago. And a lot of people do transmit their logs to QRZ. I've had quite a few requests to transmit my logs there, but I've never done so. HRD log is another one, which of course it pairs up with the Ham Radio Deluxe users. So they have their own sort of log sharing and log confirmation service that's available to their application users. But you can, if you're not using HRD, you can still transmit your log to HRD log just by setting up an account there, I believe. And a lot of people starting to email. I noticed, since I've been operating quite a bit of FT8 over the past week or so here on 10 meters and 12 meters, I've been getting some automated emails and some individual emails. One specifically from this PA4R Ham Tools, which I'm not terribly familiar with, but it looks like some sort of automated email tool for your logs that generates a canned copy of the log and also attaches a QSL card that's filled out electronically from what it appears. And I think there's like another one too, a PHP something or another. I just noticed it the other day, but I lost the link to it. So there's quite a few of these little automated tools that kind of just read through your ADIFs. And if it matches up with an email address for the end user, I'm assuming through some service like QRZ or something like that, where your email is actually in there, it'll go ahead and email the end user. And I'm not sure that's valid for anything either with regards to awards, but some people are quite happy to use these tools to initiate engagement to their contact and to their log. And that's primarily the ones that I have found over the years and have used. I think I have logins to all of these. I don't transmit to all of them, but I'm pretty certain I have accounts on most of these, except for like the PA4R Ham Tools. I'm not real familiar with that. That looks fairly new to me, at least, with receiving emails in the past week from it. And you put in here, roll your own. So what were you thinking there?
I've seen a couple of instances where people are looking for some way to self-generate and electronically distribute QSL cards based on either a photo image or a digitally created QSL where it's entirely, in-house, where it's something on a machine, like you've got PHP scripts or something like that to generate QSL cards and distribute them electronically, as opposed to using an electronic bureau or even direct paper QSLs or something like that. I don't have a specific example of that, but I know I've seen it being tossed around. So it's certainly something you could do if you maybe found yourself programmatically inclined or something like that, and you wanted to have your own method of distributing QSL cards. That was really all I had for that. Do you, so have you used QRZ for that?
No, I haven't.
No, see, I haven't. I've never paid for any of the services provided by QRZ. Clublog keeps track of a lot of information, and they're free as far as I know. I've never used any of the sort of advanced features with HamQTH either. So I guess for me, it's been strictly Logbook of the World. But you know what? Because of how prevalent that's becoming, and because they digitally sign all the contacts and everything, they've really made for a good system of getting QSLs back and forth. The only drawback, of course, is you don't have a physical copy, but of course you can print anything, right? So do people have printers anymore? Yeah, I guess they do.
Occasionally, right?
Occasionally, yeah.
It's not very common, I guess.
We're printer poor around here, so for some reason we always have to print things. So,
but yeah, so if you're really wanting to track and do awards tracking and get some of these awards and certificates and whatnot for your efforts inside of ham radio, especially in the U.S., Logbook of the World is generally the way to go with that. That'll definitely get, they have their own specific awards. They even have like the triple play that came out as well, that if get 50 states, you get your worked all states in single sideband CW and digital, you get a triple play award, which I'm still one shy of, surprisingly.
Let me guess, it's sideband.
Yeah, I think it actually is. I think it's like, it's Nebraska on sideband or something stupid like that. So, and I keep saying, oh, I'm going to get on the QSO party and I'll work some CW and some sideband calls to make up for it. But I apparently haven't done that yet. But I did poke into the CQ awards, just to kind of see like the prefix awards. And apparently, yeah, I got almost all of them except for, I think I'm about 50 prefixes short on CW. I have like 249 prefixes, but for mixed, I have like 721 prefixes. So I've worked quite a few prefixes, for the WPX, CQ awards. So, but yeah, I think it's interesting. I actually have never applied for any awards through Logbook of the World either. So maybe I'm a bad example because I'm not getting all the certificates that I possibly could be getting for. Yes, you do have to pay for them, obviously, because, you know, it's not free for them to print and mail and everything else. So you kind of pay for that awards service in those Logbook of the World confirmations. But, it's definitely easier than, bringing a stack of cards to a convention or a hamvention or one of those things where they actually do, sign off on your QSL cards for your awards. And I remember, you know, in the old days, these guys bringing in these, you know, stacks and stacks of cards. Cause, you know, obviously, but DXCC, you have to get 100 TX countries.
Yep.
So, that's a lot of cards to track with you. Yeah, I think this has made it a really easy, for people to, get involved in some of that awards, activity.
The thing is, how did that work? When you had, like, you could have 100 QSL cards from 100 different DXCC entities, but how do they verify them?
Yeah, well, they have to, I don't know. I mean, there's got to be some authoritative service person that actually does it and can sign off on the cards. And they always offer that service, at the bigger, the Hamfests and stuff like that. So apparently there is a certified way, probably through the ARRL, much like, the VE is done. You know, so it's probably you have to be certified to sign off on that stuff. Yeah, it's still done that way if people want to do paper cards. The easy mode, of course, is electronic.
Well, yeah, absolutely, because it's much easier to verify when you have two Logbook of the World contacts that have, you know, the bidirectional communication and you can cross-reference them. That's what I was saying. When you're doing it for paper contacts, I mean, you're generally not going to have your own.
Yeah, you don't need to have your own. You just have to have their card with your call sign on it and then the confirmation. So,
okay.
And it'd be harder to have their card illegitimately, I would think.
Yeah, you would think so, but it seems to me like there's much bigger opportunity for fraud there. Not like anybody's going to go out and try and defraud their DXCC certificate or whatever. But, you know, at least with Logbook of the World, you genuinely have, signed communication in both directions. You can easily verify that the QSO took place.
Yeah. It's definitely a much better and more transparent way of doing it. That's for sure.
Cool. Was that all you got?
That was it. It's not a huge topic, but I just thought since I'm being hammered with emails and stuff like that I'm never going to respond to. It's like, people, come on. Let's make sure we're doing Logbook of the World and EQSL and, some of those. And, especially if you really want to take it to the next level, if an award is actually the next level for an individual, I'm not quite sure.
And one nice thing about it is Logbook of the World, generally, they have an API, of course, and it's generally written into and interfaces with most logging software that's available, whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac OS, whatever. And so if nothing else, if you keep all of your contacts in Logbook of the World just as a centralized repository for keeping your logbook, you have all of the additional benefits of being able to do award tracking and so forth. And since it interfaces with so many different software packages, it becomes very easy to just give yourself a central backup of all your log data. So it's sort of a double benefit there.
Yeah, it can stand as sort of a backup to your log, which is quite nice. There's unfortunately, like EQSL, I noticed there's like a lot of garbage contacts that come in there that aren't confirmed. Where like Logbook of the World, I think I only have like three contacts over the last, 12 years or something like that have not matched up with anything in my log. But like I know with EQSL, I'll get all kinds of random, QSLs or QSO requests that, aren't valid according to my log.
Yeah. If you've ever dealt with EQSL.cc as an interface, you'll discover just how kludgy it is there. I know they're doing some redesign and they're trying to make it easier, but it's never been particularly friendly to get in there and look to see what contacts have come in, which ones are verified, which ones you've done, and check around and stuff like that. Logbook of the World is easier in a sense because it doesn't have really its own interface. It does. You can log into the Logbook of the World on the web and it's much easier to navigate. EQSL has always seemed just really clunky to me. So that's another reason why I've tended towards the ARRL system.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Well, I think we hammered that home as much as we needed to.
Yeah, I think so. On to announcements and feedback. Woohoo!
All right, let's go ahead and do it. And let's see. The first one is about one of your videos, and I think it's directed directly to you. So I'll let you go ahead and take the first one.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's a YouTube comment from Thomas. He says, "Thanks a lot, man. This was great. Subbed. The equivalent Arch Linux to dial out is UUCP." Yes, it is. And I did find that out myself. So, yeah, it was, everything's not always the same every distribution. So, yeah, Arch does use a different group for their serial permissions when you go ahead and add yourself, to enable your ability to connect to your serial devices. It is a little different on Arch. So it's a different group. So, yeah, thanks a lot for that comment, Thomas. That's great. And thanks for subbing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say the UUCP thing, that is a super legacy thing. Well, dial out is pretty old too, but UUCP is much older. Have you ever sent an email by UUCP?
I don't recall so.
Yeah, I have. That was a long time ago. So if you're in the I sent an email by UUCP club, you're probably in the AARP as well. So, all right. Next one is a comment on episode. Wait, what is this thing? Oh, I forgot about that thing. The next thing, the thing I'm not reading. Sorry, I got distracted.
Something shiny.
Because I was going to bring Cheryl in to read this one, but no, Cheryl says no. Okay. So we have a comment on episode number 484 from SQLiter. This was the last episode we did. He says, the SQLite fork is propaganda from an attempted woke coup of a project that is trusted for the very reasons the woke don't like it. Nothing has changed with SQLite, as you can see here. And he linked to the licensing of SQLite. Now, I don't remember if we mentioned the fact that SQLite was public domain, but it is public domain, and as such, they don't accept contributions. And I honestly have slept since the last time we did the show. And I don't remember if we talked about the fact that libSQL, the reason for libSQL is because they actually allow community contribution, which SQLite does not. That was sort of the reason for the rift. And you put in something extra here, Bill. So if you want to comment on that.
Well, I just thought since he mentioned woke twice, it was probably worthwhile for the use of the actual definition of woke, which we hear all too often. And woke, the definition of woke, according to Merriam-Webster, is one who is aware of and actively attentive to important facts and issues. And that's it. Especially issues of racial and social justice, of course, but also, that's interested in the fact that, that they're not taking contributions. And obviously some people that use the product wanted to contribute and keep moving it in a direction that they wanted to, but like, that's the whole point of open source, I think. So I think as anybody that supports SQLite, you would also have to support the idea that you can fork it at any point in time and move it in your own direction. And if it gains traction, that's just the way it is. And if anything, it's got to be flattery, right? I wouldn't consider it a coup of anything. I would consider it, flattery on the project that it's so good that, people want to do their own thing with it. And, I mean, I'm sure there's some, pissing matches back and forth and stuff like that inside and outside the community with regards to it. And I'm not really part of it, so I don't really care. But I just think that anytime you see something that does fork, it's not a bad thing in general for the project, because that's the whole point of it being open source, is that you're supposed to be able to do that. And it should be embraced by the community, not necessarily, wagging a finger at somebody and stuff like that. Oh, you shouldn't do that, blah, 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 blah. But, anyway, the open source, that's what we're doing here. Free and open source software, fork it, make it your own, do whatever you want with it, share it back. If it gets committed back to the main repo, then it does. If it doesn't, then, well, it doesn't. That's just the way it is. That's why it's a fork.
Yeah, well, you can't actually contribute back to the main fork of SQLite because it's public domain. So it's a specific kind of open source that sort of doesn't permit that kind of modification. They said they do accept community contributions, but it says down at the very bottom of the licensing page that if we like your contribution, thanks for submitting it, and don't be offended if we rewrite it ourselves and put it in the code block just to make sure nothing proprietary lands inside of SQLite. So,
yeah, I mean, I can understand that too. They want to see, stuff from Stack Overflow in there and stuff like that. Cut and paste or stuff that ran from GitHub Copilot or something like that. Maybe, necessarily lifted off of something else. But yeah, I mean, forking is still a good method of, being able to contribute, community contributions into a project. It's just living as a fork. It's not living as the main line.
Yep, absolutely. And Bill, you can cover this last one, which was a thing that happened a couple of days ago that I forgot about and somebody should have reminded me of, but
I think you would have been too sick to even attend.
I was probably fine on Friday, but
okay. Sorry about that. But anyway, yeah, the Porter County ARC in Indiana requested a Linux presentation. This was asked by Paul Braun of WD9 GCO, of course, Amateur Radio Newsline, and he's the president of the Porter County ARC. They wanted a presentation for his club Zoom meeting on October 14th. The session went pretty well, and hopefully we receive more requests like this. We always are interested in being able to join a club meeting and giving a presentation on Linux. And there were some questions there that I definitely could have used you on. Like they asked, where did the logo come from? And I know you've answered that before. and the music. So I was like, Russ is better to answer those questions than me. But it was a fun evening, and it's definitely fun to do, and especially since so many clubs are still meeting via Zoom and whatnot. So let us know if you're interested in having us join you. We definitely can find time that's compatible for one of us, two of us, three of us, what have you. We'd just like to know.
Very good. Do we happen to know if that Zoom meeting was recorded?
I think it was. I don't know if it's distributed beyond the club members or not. And hopefully not, because I'm a mess when I do those things. So just all scatterbrained, much like here on the podcast. So it's almost like you got 6 years of listening to me be scatterbrained and stuff like that. So
that's okay.
You don't need any more.
I'll email Paul and see if they got a copy of it somewhere. I would definitely like to see it. So
maybe you should
cool.
Russ should answer the questions about where the logo came from and about the music.
Well, I guess I could do that. Wow, look at you on the ball.
Yeah.
The logo was commissioned by a gentleman named Len Peralta. He does all kinds of artwork. I'm not exactly sure what he's working on these days, but I'm sure he's probably still doing commissions. He used to do a thing called Monsters by Mail or something along those lines, where you could commission him to draw you as a monster, and they were greeting cards and things like that. And he was sort of a friend of ours, based on some of our connections in the music industry. They used him for artwork in the past. And so we decided to use him as well because we really liked his artwork. And that is where the artwork came from. So if you're interested in checking out Len Peralta's work, go ahead and Google for him. He'll be the first thing you come to, I'm sure. And then the music, this was actually going to come up as a trivia question, I think, maybe about our episode 500 giveaway, so this might be a perfect time to give out the information so we know who's listening.
Yeah, exactly.
So the music was commissioned, if you will. I didn't pay him anything. He was just a good friend of mine. His name is Dave Long, and I used to work with him when I lived in Maine, and he was a musician forever and ever and ever and ever. And
he has since
passed. He died in December of 2019, I think. 2018, 2019. Yeah, it's been a little bit. So we're definitely, we mentioned that on the show when we found out about it for sure. And, but he is the one who created the music, and the title of the track, I think I have mentioned this before in the past, but I don't know. So I'm going to tell it again now. It's called Bacon, Linux, and Tomato. So that's the name of the title track. He actually did an intro version, an outro version, and an alternate intro and outro, which I have played a couple of times in the past. You've probably rarely heard them, but they have been aired. But this was the primary take and the one I liked the best for sure. So that is where the logo and the music came from.
Sweet.
And we definitely want, since we're talking about where things came from, astute listeners of the podcast might notice that there is a British woman who speaks at the intro and outro. And they might be wondering who she is. So if that is the case, her name is Caroline Lee. She's from Yorkshire in England. And she is one of the co-hosts of the Bugcast podcast, which is a music-based podcast. And for those of you who have heard the call sign G7VRI and John the Nice Guy, he has a website called CC Hits, where he keeps track of open source music. And they play primarily Creative Commons music on that podcast. And it's something I listen to. Dave is a listener of ours, and we're a listener of his, of course, and all of that. And I just thought it'd be kind of nice to have a different voice for the intro and outro. And, British voices always sound great. So I commissioned, once again, Caroline to do the intro and outro voicing. And I thought they came out pretty good. So that's where that came from. I'm not sure if there's any other... and the little stinger thing at the beginning where it's, it says welcome to the Black Sparrow Media Network thing. That was me screwing around on GarageBand. So, so I think that answers all those questions.
I think that's everything. Yeah.
All the trivia questions are answered now.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we have, since Cheryl is, having trouble with, coughing, luckily we have a nice, really short new subscribers, supporters, and live participants list for tonight. So we'll go ahead and let you get through that.
Alrighty then. So for our subscribers and Patreons, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, nobody this week.
Yeah, that's because the last episode was like 2 days ago.
2 or 3 days ago, yeah.
So, yeah.
So on Discord, we have Orbiting Cheddar and FAT, or FAT. No merchandise sales, no mailing list. On the live chat, we have Winston, KD2WLL, Tony, K4XSS, and Dan, KB6NU.
All right. Well, that brings us down to the end of the show. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this deep dive, our episode number 485 of Linux in the Ham Shack. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you'll tune in for the Short Topics episode next time around. And in the meantime, have a great week, and we'll talk to you all then. I'm Russ, K5TUX.
I'm Cheryl, W5MOO.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD 73.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a community-sponsored podcast. Our website is located at lhspodcast.info. You can support the podcast by visiting the LHS Patreon page at patreon.com/LHS podcast, or by using the contribute list on the homepage. We have a presence on Discord, Facebook, IRC, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also drop us an email at info@lhspodcast.info or leave us a voicemail at 1-909-LHS-SHOW. That's 1-909 547-7469. Visit the online LHS merchandise store at shop.lhspodcast.info for fun and fashionable show-themed merchandise. Until next time, remember to always heed your hedonism.